What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
So welcome to our show. It's Wednesday, April 24th, 2019, middle of the weekday. And just to sort of give you an explanation what happened yesterday, as you know, ever since Claire had her back injury, I've been very protective of her. We got safety rails and walking sticks and everything to basically try and take care of her. And so it was a little embarrassing when yesterday it was your humble host that took a tumble down the stairs and really hurt, really messed up my leg. And I couldn't get around, let alone do the show. I'm a little better today, but still gimping around. Okay, our control room is telling us that we've got audio now, so let's get on into it. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Sam is in our control room. He's basically taking over being the producer of this show, and we'll be doing that from now on. So when you call on in, call him Sam, and no other name here. All right, turning into the war zones. I know we keep hearing this every once in a while, but there is yet another report floating around Syria that the white helmets are going to launch a false flag chemical attack in Idlib province to try and get things restarted. Apparently, their foreign sponsors have issued the order, and the terrorists are going to use chlorine gas against civilians, including children who've been kidnapped from different regions of Idlib in recent years. And again, it makes no sense that the Syrian government and Syrian forces would gas children. That's being done for the shock effect. So apparently the terrorists are going to provide a pretext for attacks on Syria by the U.S.-led coalition. I guess the U.S. just has not given up yet. They want Assad out. If at first you don't succeed, false flag again. Alrighty, the United States, specifically the Trump administration, is saying there will be no more waivers for Iranian oil right now because so many nations are dependent on the Iranian oil. The United States has been issuing a certain amount of waivers, but now the United States wants Iran's oil exports to go all the way to zero. And so no more waivers. And this is going to cause huge hardships with other countries. This is going to affect China, India, Japan, South Korea, and Turkey, which are also countries that trade with the United States. So there's probably going to be some friction there. And Hezbollah came on out with a comment saying that these U.S. sanctions on Iran amount to aggression against the entire world because it's causing harm around the world to the various economies. And so the Secretary General of the Lebanese Hezbollah resistance, Syed Hassan Nasrallah, is calling on world nations to stand up to U.S. arrogance. So, meanwhile, Iran issued a statement that says there'll be adverse consequences if the U.S. ended their sanctions waiver on the Persian Gulf nations' oil imports. They are threatening basically to block U.S. ships trying to get through those choke points. And this is serious. The next step is firing shots at each other. And of course, everybody's talking tough over there. The commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, Al-Riza Tangsiri, vowed to take harsher actions against the United States. Now, Iran has retaliated for Donald Trump's branding of the Revolutionary Guard as a foreign terrorist organization by coming out with a bill declaring all U.S. forces are terrorists. A little bit of a tit for tat going on there. Frankly, it's a little bit silly. Okay, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Russia has launched a new submarine. A lot of it was still covered up with various tarps and so forth. But apparently the punch that it carries is that it carries a nuclear tsunami drone, is what they're calling it. And this is a drone that will sail away from the submarine, give the submarine time to get out of there, and it will basically generate a tsunami wave up to 1,600 feet high, which, by the way, will also be radioactive as it sweeps through. Everybody's arming up. They're insane. They're really going to do it. They're really going to do it. Now, Mike Pence, once again, is wagging his finger at Turkey's decision to purchase Russia's S-400 anti-aircraft missile defense system and saying how much this arms deal is an existential threat to NATO and U.S. dominance. So it's rattling around the superpowers. Turkey has come on back and said that if the United States cancels the F-35 deal, that they're going to look for the best technology elsewhere. And I would say that in all probability, that means Russia and China. Okay, we got a caller on the line. Tim in Washington. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, you always have a great show, a lot of information. I imagine you probably do 4 or 5 hours of research before you do your 3-hour shows, but you do yeoman's work. I know it's very difficult. Just 2 quick points on the Iranian point. So the United States has declared the Iranian Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization. That's 11 million man army.
Yeah.
The Iranians, their parliament has now declared the United States military a terrorist organization. Secondly, Google is now shut down all the accounts. In other words, you can't Google now in Iran. Iran has threatened to close the Straits of Hormuz.
Yes.
And furthermore, just the other day, the United States actually bombed, I think for the first time ever, used the Air Force to bomb the Iranians right there in Syria. That was my first point. And I got a real quick, short second point, but did you want to respond to that? Are we looking at war, Mike?
It certainly seems so. It certainly seems so. There's too few voices of restraint out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then the other second point, I just wanted to give you the heads up. This is rumor, but I don't think it's rumor now. It's coming through too many places. But supposedly Tucker Carlson of Fox News is coming up with a America First manifesto, the Republican Party blueprint for winning the 2020 presidential election in a landslide. And it's going to be Tucker's, complete manifesto. And what a lot of people think that he's thinking about doing, or that the rumor is, he's going to take his family back to California for the summer.
Yep.
Run his Fox News shows out there, and Tucker Carlson with his little, America First Manifesto red book, he's going to try to take over and force Trump to pick him as VP and get rid of Mike Pence, because Pence is not bringing anything to the ticket. Trump's got the evangelicals.
Yes.
Pence is them no good. Tucker Carlson, he's got the millennials, he's got the women, he can repair that immigration crack base, the pro-life crack base. So we may be looking at a game changer where somebody like a Tucker Carlson comes out of nowhere. He's got the education, the looks, the family. He could literally take this party over with that little, manifesto red book, and energize the whole, become a Trump too. I want you to, what do you think of that? Do you think that's a possibility?
I think it's definitely a possibility. And over in Ukraine, they just elected a comedian to be their leader. And, wasn't all that long ago we elected an actor. So yeah, I think it's definitely possible. And Tucker Carlson's a very smart individual. The question is going to be, is he going to continue the war agenda? Because right now that seems to be, have a lock on the American political system.
Well, don't you agree, Mike, that if we go to war with Iran, that everybody's talking about an economic collapse and a reset?
Yep.
Don't you think that it would trigger that?
Yeah, we're hovering on the edge here. I mean, this is going to be a disaster. It could be a Pyrrhic victory. We could technically win the war and still suffer a major, for all practical reasons, defeat.
Yeah, economically, with a complete collapse and reset, and that might be part of the globalist plans, anyways. Is actually to use Trump and his business skills, since he's so good at bankruptcy, to take the United States into bankruptcy. And supposedly, there's another currency, a gold-backed treasury note, that they got planned once this thing happens. But if we go to war, Mike, everybody needs to really get ready, because there's no way of avoiding an economic collapse with $200 a barrel oil and just a havoc. And Iran is no little. It's not like Iraq or Afghanistan. These Iranians, these guys are warriors. They're not scared. They can fight.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, always a great show, Mike. I always enjoy it. You have so much information. You really are an asset to everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. And we're going to switch over to Mo in Florida. Aloha, Mo. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. You really obviously got a great show, and you do have great callers. That last guy was spot on. But, I just couldn't, just to go along with what you're talking about, you always talk about World War II, and you were, right on the money that, we egged Japan on, cut their oil supply off.
Yep.
Remember, Secretary of State Dean Acheson wanted to cut off Japan's oil.
Yes.
And, purposely done to antagonize them and start the war. It's like, was it, I forget who said that history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. This is exactly what we're doing with Iran.
Yeah.
This is like,
we're goading and provoking everybody, and not just Iran. I mean, it looks like they're going to ramp Syria back up again. The U.S. is going up against China in the South China Sea. They're talking tough with Russia now, and we don't have the means to take on all these military peers at the same time.
Oh, you're exactly right. It's like you're watching this thing, and it's like it is a dream. You can't believe anybody could be this stupid, other than they must really want to bring on a nuclear war. And I know that's a terrible thing to say, but what do they think Iran's going to do? They got Russia, they got China. They're not going to just sit by and let the United States is like a weakened Roman, overexpanded empire.
Yes.
And everybody knows it. We're broke. I wish there was a place to go, Mike. I mean, I don't know. It's just amazing to watch this thing play out and realize you don't have to be a genius to see what's going on here. This is ridiculous.
Well, that's the problem with a world war, is the entire world gets caught up in it, and there really isn't much of any place to go. And, it's a scary time. It's a very scary time. And part of the problem, unfortunately, is we've got all these neocon war hawks who are absolutely convinced that the United States cannot suffer a military defeat, even though we did in Vietnam, and we didn't exactly win in Korea, and we're not doing all that well in either Syria or Afghanistan. But they're still gung-ho, and they still want to get that Iran, and they basically want to take over the world. They want to take over the world, bring back Bretton Woods.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this last thing, and you'll probably say I'm poisoning the well, but I really do think there's some freaking evil aliens behind this thing, because nothing else makes sense. Why would we do something so stupid? This is ridiculous. Never before has the world been, this. I don't know where the nuclear clock is. I haven't looked at it, for a while. But this is beyond ridiculous, Mike.
Well, again, as you say, history is rhyming, because every time the United States government has gotten the economy into this kind of a mess, they get into a world war, if not to get out of the economic mess, but to distract everybody from it. You know, yes, we're all going hungry, and yes, times are hard, but there's a war on. Crash of 1907, World War I, crash of 1929, World War II, crash of 2008, and it's ramping up. We can see it every single day. And when you add in all of these new automated weapon systems, I think the possibility for a mistake it cannot be ignored.
Well, all I can say is I wish Ron Paul would run again. He's the only guy that, you know, that has the moral decency that people listen to. He had over 85% of the military behind him.
Yes.
This is very serious, you know. All right, Mike, thanks a lot, man. Great. You're the point man, and God bless you and Claire.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. And so Turkey is basically saying that if the U.S. blocks the sale of the F-35, they're going to basically go find other technology elsewhere. Well, their timing is great, because having already botched the F-22 and the F-35 and the Zumwalt and so many of these other weapon systems, the Pentagon is already planning a replacement for the F-35. And it's going to be called the Penetrating Counter-Air, or PCA, and it will cost 3 times as much per aircraft as the F-35. So on the drawing boards, and you know, just pony up the money, because we're going to build about 400 of these things. It really is insane out there. All right, the United States is delivering excavation equipment to Syria's Kurdish YPG. That, of course, is concerning to Turkey. Supposedly, this shipment is building material and construction equipment intended to allow for reconstruction after the defeat of ISIS. But the feeling in Turkey is there's a lot of substantial excavation equipment that could be used for mass tunnel digging across Syria and in anticipation of the Turkish invasion. Everybody's invading everybody else. The United States ambassador to Russia, John Huntsman, says there's really little need for his craft, little need for him to do his job, because we've got 200,000 tons of diplomacy prowling the waters of the Mediterranean. So that's this guy's attitude. He's saying U.S. practices diplomacy with aircraft carriers. So it's a terrible mindset. I got to repost Mark Twain's The War Prayer. I think it's time people reread that one. Over in Germany, Angela Merkel says she wants to remain in office until her term is up. But behind the scenes, there are rumors that Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer may take over the chancellorship before the end of Merkel's term. I guess people in Germany are just really kind of fed up with her. Over in Libya, Khalifa Haftar is attacking Tripoli. The European Union has formally recognized the new government in Tripoli. The French officials seem to be playing both sides. We've got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, Mirko. Welcome back to our show here. And I'm looking at this article from governmentslavers.news, where apparently a White House insider is saying that Trump plans to start a war with Iran this fall. Okay. What a messed up world this is. What a messed up world. Okay, let's take another phone call here. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
That Huntsman guy, did you ever see 200,000 tons of metal going down to the bottom of the ocean? Because Russia's got that supercavitating Cheval torpedo that does 235 miles an hour. And there's nothing they probably can stop that thing. So it's just all bravado. What an arrogance, you know. it's such an arrogant, ignorant statement. Like it's like the politicians we have and these people, they just spurt out everything now. Like, they don't care. I mean, they have no respect for any other country. They don't even respect, like, our own elements of our own government.
Yeah.
It's just, we're in a dangerous time. I mean, the whole Iran thing, it's amazing. Trump said he ran on no wars. I mean,
yes.
he
So did
he
Obama.
Also, remember, but Mike, he kept telling people, like, he wasn't going to tell everybody the plans he's got. He tells everybody everything, though. Like this leak insider, you don't think that's on purpose to scare Iran? Insider comes out and say, we're going to attack. I mean, if he attacks Iran, we don't have enough oil for ourselves here. We have to import it still from Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
No matter what they tell us on the statistics, we don't produce as much as we use. They'll wipe out the oil fields in Saudi Arabia, the refineries. This country would come to a standstill. That will give you $200, $300, $400 a barrel of oil prices at that point. It would be a blunder. I mean,
It would be.
whatever.
It absolutely would be.
I just don't understand, like, I do understand, but I just don't. I got to disagree with Joe on, like, the deep state. Trump has surrounded himself with the deep. There's not going to be no indictments from, like, with QAnon. That never came out. That was bogus.
Yes.
Hillary Clinton's not going to be subpoenaed. None of these people are going to be, maybe low-hanging fruit, but the rest, Loretta Lynch, nothing going to happen to her. Susan Rice, nothing going to happen to her. You don't surround yourself with the deep state to go after the deep state. Now, there might be certain elements in other parts of the deep state, but look what happened to Seth Rich. That's
Yes.
what happens to you when you go up against the deep state. So I don't see no subpoenas coming. Trump's not... Like I said, Mike, I gave up on him a while ago, And, and Mike, by the way, that Russian sub is called the Belgorod or something like that.
Okay.
It's 184 meters. It's longer than the Typhoon, and that holds 6 Poseidon, those Poseidon torpedoes, the drones.
Yes.
Up to 6. So that's insane. And one of those Poseidons can take out 2 carrier groups. So
That's true. A
if they're close
1,600-foot tsunami wave would devastate, the entire carrier group, just like it would a shoreline.
But okay, Mike, have a good rest of the show.
All right, thanks an awful lot, Dustin. We're going to let you go here. And if you were wondering what that momentary glitch on the sound was, apparently there's a thunderstorm in Round Rock, and so it's causing them more worries and headaches. Okay, so let's go over to Ukraine, because they had their election, and Zelensky, the comedian, won. Poroshenko is out, and the Western powers were a little bit concerned, because the task of the president of Ukraine was to continue the political war with Russia, and they weren't sure that Zelensky was going to go along with that. They were afraid he would become a real peace candidate. So apparently consultations with the U.S. Embassy led to a consensus that the U.S. does not impede Zelensky's victory, and Zelensky does not question the continuation of the Russophobic course of Ukraine. So here in this case, we're interfering in their their internal political affairs. It's happening all over the place here. But Poroshenko is out, and maybe he's going to finally face the music for some of the things that he's done, but I doubt it. We do seem to live in a world where the people on the top are immune. Everything they do with impunity. It's only the little people get punished. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones here to Art Off the Grid. Aloha, Art. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. As always, decent broadcast.
Thank you.
But something I've not really heard a whole lot of people talking about, and this is, they once again raised the debate about whether or not there should be reparation to black people for the sins of slavery.
Yes.
Well, the few people who are willing to talk about this seem to be forgetting one very important thing. And that is, if you look at the black population here in the United States, descendants of slaves are of a great majority, because the vast majority, a great minority, I should say, because the vast majority of blacks in this country are descendants of people who came here after the abolishment of slavery. So they're not descendants of slaves. So,
yep.
And when we look at white people, or those who would have owned slaves, the descendants of those slave owners are an incredible vast minority as well, because the vast majority of white Europeans and white people from around the world came here long after slavery was abolished. So when you start talking about this, first of all, you would have to be able to prove that you are a descendant of a slave. Now, that's going to cost money, because they're going to have to chase your family tree all the way back. So the first question becomes, who's going to pay for your Ancestry.com or whatever the case may be? Then what you have to do is you have to identify the exact slave owner, and then fast forward tracking their descendants up until you find someone living today who is descendant of that slave owner. Now, what happens if you have one person who is a descendant of a slave, but yet there are 18 descendants of a slave owner? Well, you know what? That's going to get a little bit ridiculous, because now you got to figure out, now you got to figure out who pays how much and what and whatever. And what happens if you have a slave owner who has no descendants? Or what happens if you have a descendant of a slave who has no descendants? You see where the complication begins here. And
it's really not workable, and it wasn't intended to work. This is just cheap pandering politics by the Democrats, who are trying to lure the black vote. They're literally trying to buy it. Vote for us, we'll see that you get reparations, which is the new fancy name for buying your vote.
Pretty much, yeah. So, here we see, this is, as you said, it's all a scam. This is just an actual ridiculous argument, and I am so sick and tired of hearing this crap. I just wish more people would look at the reality just as I've laid it out. And if people would look at this simple reality, this is not rocket science, this is simple common sense and logic. And if people would simply apply a little more common sense and logic to their arguments, we could do away with probably about 80% of the caca in Washington.
Yep.
And then we could focus on the real issues of, illegal, unwanted immigration.
Yep.
Oh, but that would make too much sense. Anyway, thanks, Mike. Talking to you again later.
Yeah, I think one of the problems that we're dealing with right now, of course, is the campaigning never stops. We have evolved to that situation where the campaigns are always running, and the political infighting is always running. And frankly, I think it makes the politicians look childish, immature. Anyway, let's go back to the phones here. James in Tokyo. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Long time. Hope you're doing okay. You look a lot better than a couple weeks ago, but I just think maybe you weren't feeling so well because you felt guilty about being a privileged white man.
No, I've never felt that I was a privileged white man.
You'll get over it, Michael.
You know something? Somebody actually did a study and discovered that white people tend not to see themselves in terms of their race. Okay, the black community sees themselves as black. The Hispanics see themselves as Hispanic. Same thing with the Asians. White people don't have that cohesiveness. They see themselves in terms of their jobs and their career choices and their family and their religion. They don't go around saying, I'm a white person. I'm a white American.
I agree with you, except if I consider your last caller talking about reparations, if they do decide to give reparations, I am going to consider myself 0.00001 black. I won't give me a piece of that action.
Well, it's never going to happen, and I think I would hope that the black voters of this country are smart enough to realize it's never going to happen. It's going to be another busted campaign promise, because the Democrats have been courting the black vote for decades, and have the lives of the black community really improved all that much? And the answer is no.
Well, one of the things about, I think a lot of the black voters are actually, well, if I consider like Dustin from New Jersey, I think a lot of the blacks, the minorities, and the women are actually like walking away from the Democrats. And I think they like Trump basically due to economics. They're, if you believe the figures that are out, jobs are at an all-time pretty much, high, except for maybe women, it might almost be a high. But
that's
for
if you
blacks,
trust the
minorities, jobs are an all-time high. And if you believe it, but I got to disagree with like Dustin on a lot of stuff. I mean, first, I think he needs to take some extendivite and relax a little bit and stop worrying about Russian weaponry, because I don't think America is going to be attacked by anybody. Even with old weapons, America still has the capability to defend itself. Number one. Number two, I don't think Trump is pro-war. Like you mentioned that you read an article that he's going to attack Iran. I just don't believe it. I believe his animosity towards Iran, like recently with putting the sanctions on oil, was due to the deal that Obama did when they put, 5 different planes filled with pallets of cash and paid off different European countries to start doing business with Iran and getting kickbacks. And even Iranian politicians themselves had come out and said that, if you screw with us, we're gonna let everybody know where all that money went. I mean, this is, not from like an article. This is from, the Iranian government themselves. And considering Saudi Arabia, I'm always thinking, screw them. And I think Dustin is wrong. America is awash in oil. The only problem that America has, though, it has so much oil that it can't deliver it all through the pipeline system. And that's the main problem with America. I mean, and that's why, like, even the same with like Canadian oil, which would go for like even under $20 a barrel, just because they can't even deliver it, and they're awash in oil themselves.
Yes.
And a lot of the oil companies are going under. So, I mean, and as far as what he said concerning the indictments, you had Representative Nunes said that he was giving criminal referrals. Trump himself tweeted out that he's going to declassify the Pfizer reports, which and people are stating now that they say that like all the Pfizer reports, they lied. They said that it was all corroborated, type of evidence. So I think criminal referrals will come from to Loretta Lynch.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of waiting. It's been more than 2 years, and now Hillary's talking about getting back into the 2020 race again, and that's annoying the heck out of me.
She will come back in the 2020 race, and Bernie will bend over like he did the last time. When they stole the nomination from him, and he got on TV and said, forget about the emails. Hillary is going to come back, but I think the indictments are going to come by the summer, and it's going to be, everybody's tired of waiting. Everybody, there's this big hatred I feel like there's basically a civil war in America. I mean, I've lost friends due to telling people that the whole Russian thing, is a fake. So, whatever. I just think everybody needs to kind of relax and cool down. And I'm happy that I could at least talk to you and get my frustrations out, Michael.
Well, okay. It's one thing the show is good for. Anyway, James, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go and switch over to Gary in Arkansas. Gary, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I got hit up with Department of Human Services, and this was going on all over the country, but it's happening to me now. But they came out and did an assessment. And what they're doing is, I'm an invalid. I'm 77 years old, live by myself. And they're trimming back the number of hours that the health aide comes in, to help me bathe and everything.
Yeah.
And this is not a benefit. I paid for this with FICA for 77 years. Plus, they got a $1 million birth certificate they cut on me when I was born, and I probably got several $1 million in that account, which will go to the government when I die. My family won't see any of it. They take $1 million insurance policy out on each soldier, and if he's combat-related death, the family gets a measly $10,000 or $20,000, and the government keeps the rest of the money. So I just, with all these illegal immigrants coming in, they've got plenty of money to buy them houses, cars, dental, health, college, you name it. They get everything, and they're sitting there, bitching about paying me a few bucks a week, to have some help in here to, I can't cook and wash dishes because I can't stand. And, but it's just a problem that's hitting me that's going to hit a lot of the elderly.
Yeah.
And it's going on right now.
Especially next year, the cash outflow from the Social Security Trust Fund is going to be greater than the incoming Social Security tax revenues. So they're starting to run out of money.
They've stolen out of it. They've stolen it and put worthless IOUs in.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is that my taxes and the FICA I paid in plus the $1 million birth certificate bond that's been accruing interest for 77 years at 6%. You don't tell me there's not a few bucks a week to pay for some help to help me out. And I just wanted to alert the listeners that I'm not going to be the only one that's going to be getting hit with this.
Nope.
It's going to be nationwide. They're trimming back the expenses. Yes, they got plenty of money for these damn Muslims coming in, to basically tear our country up and our heritage and everything. So that's my message for the audience.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the phone call, and I hope you're able to find somebody a little more sympathetic over there at Social Security. But yeah, Social Security it's running out of money, and
it's a Department of Homeland, not Homeland, but
Health and Human Services.
Human Services.
Yeah.
They've been ordered to trim it back so they can have more money for the Muslims. And quite frankly, I got something here for the Muslims. So,
now, be nice. This is a family-friendly show.
Well, I'm not going to have my country invaded by a bunch of, this is the Crusades over again, looks like to me.
It is a huge
know.
mess. It is a huge mess out there, and it's sort of, you wonder, what are they really thinking that all this stuff is happening? It really is tearing our country apart. Anyway, Gary, Gary, gotta let you go, and we're gonna switch to Rick in Arizona. And Rick, I'm probably gonna have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking back to the day when I was reading Ari Ben-Menashe's book called Prophets of War.
Yes.
Have you heard of that book?
Yes.
And he was a arms merchant for Israel. He was very busy in Sri Lanka. And when I think about that, and I see all these dead people, I don't see Muslims killing Christians. I see people in the background doing things to make people think Muslims are killing Christians. Now, Ari said that he was in the business of providing Stinger missiles stolen from the United States to the Tamil Tigers, who were forcing Muslims out of the Northeast so they could have themselves their own territory. So this, when we have this type of presence in Sri Lanka, and then we have this kind of violence, this is not a coincidence. I hate to say it, Mike.
Yep. Well,
people are automatic. They're feeding this. There's another thing about the Easter worshipers are talking about is that the people do not want to offend the Jews in the media by saying Jesus Christ. Okay, they're goofing on people saying Easter worshipers.
Yes.
But you can't say Jesus Christ. Okay.
They were going out of their way to avoid using the word Christian.
Well, they don't say Mueller, they say Muller. Mueller was head of Gestapo in Nazi Germany. So the Americans they're not sophisticated enough, and they're just too malleable and impressionable, and the media just runs them over with this crap. And think twice when you see dead people. Thanks for taking my call.
All right, we're going to take a break for some commercials. Back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Jim in Montana. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. How's it going?
Well, pretty good, except for falling down the stairs yesterday.
Oh, geez. Hey, did you get hurt?
A little bit. I'm a little banged up.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Well, anyway, I just wanted to say that I agree with that one caller. I don't know if I believe about Trump wanting to go to war with Iran. Sounds a little misinformation-y, possibly. I don't really think that's...
I don't know. They've been talking about war with Iran for the longest time here. Bolton certainly wants it. Pompeo certainly wants it. Netanyahu certainly wants it. Israel wants all those large regional countries smashed up so they're less of a political challenge.
I don't know if that's really what, I understand Pompeo and Israel, and I understand Trump's got a bit of an alliance with Israel, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but I don't know. I don't know if that's maybe, but, And I also, I like Dustin, and I love your show. I think you do a great job.
Thank you.
But I disagree with you guys a little bit on Trump. I think he's working hard. I think he's fighting for us. I really do. I could see it on his face. He's frustrated. He's frustrated real bad. He's got a tough job. And I'll tell you this, he's the hardest working president we've had in years. Most presidents were off in Hawaii doing their golf vacations every few months,
Yeah.
He's in there. When I understand the press corps, the White House press corps, they have a hard time keeping up with him. They can't keep up with him, And there's been things that he's done that I don't completely agree with. And, I think he's kind of dropped the ball with North Korea there. He was real close. But he's gone farther than anyone else ever has. You got to give him some credit. And you don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes. We don't.
No, I don't.
You know, and I think it's, yeah, you know, and I think it's just a tangled spider web of crap that goes on with the government. If you cut one string, you screw something else up, you know. And so I think he's got. I think it's a delicate situation, you know. I think he's frustrated. I think he is trying for us. I really do. He's doing the perfect job now.
No,
you know, he's made mistakes here and there.
He's doing a terrible job. He talks a lot. He tweets a lot. But he keeps backing down on actually doing anything. We're seeing that start to happen down at the border.
Yeah, boy, I hope that's not the case, because that may be one of, not the, but one of our biggest issues. That right there.
Yeah, it is. Okay, Jim, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for station identification. Back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to go back to the phones to Nathan in California. Aloha, Nathan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Michael. I just wanted to mention a little something about Waco, but somebody just called in about Sri Lanka.
Yes.
And, well, I was looking at some photos last week, and one of the strangest things that I saw is that you see this picture of Jesus, you know, and he's got all the blood splatter on him.
Yep.
And I think that was in St. Sebastian's Church. You know, the roof is all blown up.
Yep.
There's debris all over the place, and there isn't one chip on Jesus. Not one chip. You know, it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. How come his arm wasn't blown off? Well, maybe, just maybe, it was fake. And then they show this dead guy in Sebastian's, and he's wearing a brand new white T-shirt. Okay.
Yep.
Not one rip, not one tear, not one drop of blood on him, and the whole thing, the church is a disaster. And then I noticed the ceiling fans, and it's like, well, you got all these ceiling fans, and oh, geez, a couple of them have some bent blades, but all the rest of them are fine. And just for the last thing to say on this, they had drills with Israel back in January and February or whatever for multi-terrorism events, and I don't buy it, Michael. I do feel sorry for you in some ways, because if you start talking about this event as a hoax, don't say a word. They will bounce you off of YouTube so fast your head will spin. You cannot, under any circumstances, go against the grain, or you're gone.
Yeah.
And believe me, I've been kicked off YouTube 3 times, and right now I'm shadow banned, and I'm lucky if I get 25 views. They're very, very serious about censorship, and you either toe the line or you're gone.
Yep.
They just bounced Louisa and Jim Fetzer at the Goldfish Report.
Yes.
Oh, the poor gal is in a tailspin, you know. They bounced her off YouTube for an unlisted video. So anyway, that's how bad it is. So I kind of feel sorry for you, because you can't really tell people your true feelings. You can't even, you just can't go there. And so that's kind of sad.
Well, I don't use YouTube an awful lot these days. I mean, I did some music videos for Claire's Music and a couple of other short subjects, but generally I don't bother with it anymore because of the censorship. YouTube has made itself worthless.
Well, I know, and you know, you could really have some fascinating shows when it gets into these particular events, because what I seem to believe personally, ever since Sandy Hook, it's the merger of Hollywood, the mainstream media, and our shadow government, and they all work together to create these movie clips
for the news where you think this event happened, this shooting or this bombing or whatever, and it's just a staged event.
Yes.
And so many people buy into this stuff, and it's
not
just
as much as they used to. I mean, especially after Saddam's nuclear weapons, and especially after two solid years of Russia collusion coming from the corporate media.
Yeah.
Polls are showing that Americans' trust in the corporate media is at record lows.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear, and I hope more of them will follow suit. Well, one quick thing on Waco, if I can. You mentioned it last week. It was, 25, 26 years ago?
Yep,
I
something
believe.
like that.
Yeah, so I was living in Southern California at the time. And I came up to Northern California, here where I am now, to, visit some family members or whatever. And so I went in to see my father and sat down, and we were watching TV, and this Waco event is on. And that's when the tank, went up to the side of the house, pushed the turret inside, and they pumped what I just found out was the equivalent of 400 canisters of tear gas into the compound.
Yes.
And then about 6 months after this happened, I was watching 60 Minutes, and one of the Branch Davidians said that turret knocked over a lantern and started a fire. But anyway, back to sitting there watching TV, I see all the flames starting, and the place is going crazy. It's just like, whoa. I said to my father, I said, why in the world is this thing going up so fast? And he said, oh, that's easy. He said, tear gas is not a gas, it's a dust.
Yes.
He said, let me show you. And it's like, oh, geez, here comes lecture number 394. So he goes into the kitchen, opens a cupboard, grabs a sack of flour, sticks his hand in there and gets a pinch of it between his index finger and thumb. He turns on the gas stove, and he flicks it over the gas stove.
Yep.
And you see all these little sparkles.
Yes.
And he said that's what happened in Waco. And you were talking, I believe, about dust fires the other day, and at one point there was like
you'd be surprised how many materials will burn vigorously if they're ground down to find enough particles.
Oh,
and
ground aluminum will burn.
Yeah, yes.
Industrial dust fires are a big problem. They had like 281 of them in 25 years. So I was just saying, from what I saw, poison gas, I don't think so. I think they suffocated in smoke inhalation. I really do. So, I don't mean to disagree with you, but what I saw, that thing went up. I don't see how anybody could breathe under those circumstances.
Well,
So that
as
was
a
my
matter of
2 cents.
fact, on the few autopsies that were actually conducted, there was no smoke inhalation in their lungs. So these people were all dead before the fire got underway.
Yeah. Well, one last thing. You remember the Pan Am, the two 747s that collided in the Canary Islands years ago?
Oh, yes.
One of them went down the runway and T-boned one. He was trying to take off. Well, the captain had gotten out of the plane, and he was talking to one of the medical doctors, and he was saying that all the passengers were screaming and screaming and screaming, and then it all suddenly stopped. He said, well, what in the world caused that? And the doctor said they ran out of oxygen, and they just died, because the plane was on fire. Kind of a disaster.
Yes.
So anyway, between that and Dresden and other instances, that's where I'm at. And I did see a video on YouTube, to say the last thing, a few days ago. It was saying that, it was smoke inhalation or whatever. But the stories that are out there, I think at this point, are rather confusing. But that was my 2 cents on Waco. So
Okay, well,
leave it.
thank you for your 2 cents on Waco, and we're going to let you go and switch over to Steve Elkins. Steve, thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
Well, I have to agree with your other caller. actually disagree with you, the caller, 2 callers ago, about Trump doing a lot of good things and not agreeing with everything he's done so far, but he's doing an all right job. He's trying to beat back the bullies, I guess, the deep state, but I disagree. I think he could do a lot more. And I was just thinking about if the greatest strategy would be, if he actually is being blackmailed or, let's just say, death threats to him and his family, wouldn't the greatest strategy be to bring your entire family into the White House, the compound, and protect everybody with top security, and then out the deep state to say these are the members of the deep state that have been threatening me? I mean, wouldn't that break the back of the deep state, and then people would all understand what's going on? And this whole couple of years of not being able to do anything and all these witch hunts and everything else, I just, that would be the strategy I would take. Bring my immediate family into my own compound and have the top-notch security, whatever you have to secure yourself, but then out the sources of the deep state people, acknowledge them that they're there, and these are the people.
Yep. And the question would be,
I'd like to see that.
What would be the popular reaction be? And unfortunately, I know that we here at this show at RBN, we have a strong sense of justice, and I want payback for the Clintons wrecking my life 25 years ago. But for a lot of Americans, they're just going to sit there and say, well, they're politicians and they're government. This is just the way it all kinds of work. I think the deep state is going to have to somehow literally be destroyed from within. Again, it's just, we have a government that has turned into a criminal enterprise.
Agree. Very agree. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to do a shout out now for our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network, and the phone lines are open. So getting on back to the news here. Apparently, there's this court case that declared a male-only military draft is unconstitutional. And the plaintiffs in this case are suing to force the government to either force women to register for combat or eliminate mandatory draft registration entirely. Now, this has gone back and forth as an issue for a long time about whether women should be allowed in combat roles, and it depends on the kind of combat. For mechanized combat, like flying a warplane or being on a Navy ship or being with the field artillery, absolutely. But, ground pounding, it's a little different. The men are going to be stronger, bigger, able to run faster and carry more equipment and ammunition. And so probably not a good idea. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Al in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, you're talking about the deep state. And, what is the deep state? Are these entrenched politicians? Are these lifelong employees of the alphabet soup agencies?
Yes.
All their friends. It's huge.
Yes.
In the United States, you got a big government down there.
Yeah, I mean, basically, when you're talking about the deep state, it is the bureaucracy.
Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, we all know that the government doesn't really run things. People vote, but they don't really make a difference. I mean, some of these people, these politicians, where do they come from? They come out of nowhere.
Yes.
They're just, boom. Well,
they're auditioned.
You have to vote for it.
I mean, yeah. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, apparently they found her at a casting call.
Yeah. So, it's the deep state. The deep state, well, who is that? Who is the deep state? It's probably, probably a good 10 or 15,000 people entrenched in the government of the United States.
And corporate leadership.
And then their friends. Yeah, and then, of course, all their donors.
All the money junkies.
It's all those rich folk.
Yep.
You're not going to get rid of them. It's never going to happen. The United States of America, capitalism was built on those people. They built that country in using the slave labor of, the people that came in and immigrated to the United States. And they were, paid, I guess at the time, decent wages, but still, it's, I've lost hope, Mike. I'm sorry, but you know what? I'm in my 50s now.
I have too.
Yeah, it's not going to change. I'm sorry. But, you just have to accept it. And hopefully the young kids can do something about it. If not, well, not looking good.
It is not looking good at all. And again, we've got imminent major wars, a stressed economy, and crumbling infrastructure. Yeah, I've lost hope too. Everybody that's inside that deep state, they're out for themselves. And they just want more money and more power, and they rule the masses with lies and platitudes. And it's a big lie factory. Apparently, NBC and CNN got caught faking pictures of kids with measles to scare us all in to buy our vaccine here. Anyway,
well, there
Al,
you go, right?
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to let you go and switch over to Bill in Wisconsin. Aloha, Bill. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, man. Aloha, first of all. I saw yesterday on PBS, they interviewed the new head of Homeland Security. Trump has come up with another Obama holdover to head up Homeland Security.
Yes.
He vetoed leaving Yemen. Okay? Now, he claims to be pro-life. Okay? We want to save the children. When you look at what's going on in Yemen over the years, it's been a catastrophe for the whole country, of course, but especially for the children. Congress, both the House and the Senate, tried to pull out of there, and he vetoed that. So, this idea that we have the smartest president that ever held the office is just a bunch of baloney, bullcrap, whatever you want to call it. There's a show on PBS called Firing Line.
Yes.
With Margaret, I forget her last name, but she had on Ann Coulter. And Ann Coulter said, she's sick of Trump's double dealing here.
Yep.
She said, appoint James Kovach, as head of Homeland Security. Now, who is he? He ran for governor in the state of Kansas, got no help from Trump. He was in charge of investigating vote fraud. And when he found it up in New Hampshire, Trump eliminated the entire investigation. We're not going to look at that anymore. So, I agree with the people that say there is no hope. I believe that, we're on our knees, we're saying our prayers, and that's about the only thing that we have left. Because you either go along with Trump and his absolute phoniness, or, they'll come along with, Joe Biden or some other worthless Democrat.
Yep. All righty. Well, listen, Bill, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And once again, the phone lines are open. Over on The View, which I don't tend to watch all that much, but every once in a while something fun happens. Meghan McCain apparently took Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to task for making a comment that the Veterans Affair provides the highest quality care to our veterans. And Meghan said, are you kidding? Vets have literally died waiting for care over there. Alexandria is an embarrassment. It's clear she doesn't know what she's talking about. He's a manufactured candidate. Okay, over in North Korea, they have sidelined Kim Jong-un's right-hand man, who basically, they're blaming him for the failed summit between the two countries. So he's basically being replaced here. Meanwhile, Kim Jong-un is going to meet President Vladimir Putin in Russia on Thursday. So we're going to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And it does seem like we're a world at war already. And there's this article that's coming out of Strategic Culture talking about a summer of confrontation looms in the South China Sea. And it says, it is obvious the U.S. armed forces are gearing up for a summer of confronting China, and that this is going to be affected on land, by sea, and in the air. But provocation cannot be accepted indefinitely. So they're still making a big issue about freedom of navigation. Now, the generally accepted definition of freedom of navigation is the right recognized in international law, especially by treaties or agreements for vessels of one or all states, to navigate streams passing through two or more states. That's basically it. Not play brinksmanship with it. And I imagine maybe one of the reasons they're going back into Syria is they haven't done all that well in Venezuela. And it's turning into this David and Goliath struggle. Maduro playing the role of David and the United States war machine playing Goliath. And it's ground to a halt. Must be very frustrating. Short of an outright military intervention, it looks like it's fizzled. So, all these stalemates all over the globe. All right, let's turn to the domestic politics here, because, again, it's just, I'm watching these politicians behave like such children. So, once again, impeachment is back in the discussion. You've got a whole bunch of Democrats saying, no, let's drop it. It's a loser. We're making Trump look like the victim here. And then you have the other side, which says, impeach him now. We've got him. We've got him. And Pelosi is trying to play down the impeachment threats along with Bernie Sanders. And then you have people like Hillary Clinton, who are out there screaming, there's a clear path to impeachment. So Trump is angry. He said, I did nothing wrong, and he's going to take the threatened impeachment all the way to the Supreme Court, who, by the way, doesn't really have anything to say about it. So the Mulla Report was written by angry Democrats and Trump haters, spent $35 million on it, and did nothing. So now they're trying to say, oh, well, the only reason they didn't find anything is that Trump had to obstruct the investigation. And so Hillary Clinton has blamed the Justice Department rules for the Mueller Report's failure to indict President Donald Trump, declaring the roadmap to an obstruction charge is there in plain sight should Congress choose to pursue it. Now, this, of course, is coming from the lady who erased 33,000 emails that were under subpoena. So Joe Biden is going to declare for 2020 tomorrow, and word is that Hillary Clinton will step in shortly thereafter. I'm not happy about that. Of course, she may be dealing with Hillary fatigue. I think a lot of people are still sick of her from 2016. Meanwhile, Rudy Giuliani is lashing out at the Clintons, calling them America's #1 crime family. And this was in response to yesterday's remarks by Hillary that Donald Trump would have been indicted if he weren't president. And Giuliani came back and said, I encourage Hillary to get very involved in the 2020 election. She blew the last one for the Dems. She's working on a book called How to Obstruct and Go Free. And the sequel will be How My Husband Escaped a Perjury Conviction. So he's not pulling any punches down there. Okay. A senior FBI official has admitted under oath the FBI found emails sent from Hillary Clinton's unsecured server in President Obama's executive office in the White House. Now, this shows that the Obama FBI had to go to the White House to find emails that Hillary Clinton was trying to hide or destroy. This came out of Judicial Watch. By the way, little flashback article that we put out. This was on CNN from 2017, where British intelligence admitted they were eavesdropping on Trump associates' communications with Russians and sharing the information with their U.S. counterparts. So there was spying. All right, we're going to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and I'm looking through my emails. Somebody was just writing to ask, whatever transpired against that charge that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez used campaign funds to pay her boyfriend? Is she the new Hillary Rodham Clinton? No. I mean, she's not smart enough to be Hillary Rodham Clinton. Crooked enough? Yeah. But it takes more than that to make a Hillary. Somebody else basically came on out and said, impeachment, really what charge? Talk is cheap. Well, they're talking about an obstruction of justice charge. And that's because Robert Mueller basically said that, well, some of the things that Trump did sort of interfered, got in the way, and maybe could make a case for obstruction. Here's my thinking. There was no crime. There was no Trump-Russia collusion. We got to hear about it for 2 solid years, though. So it makes it kind of silly to say that an investigation that was not going to find anything anyway was obstructed. Now, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton was on the Lou Dobbs Tonight show 2 days ago, and basically came on out talking about Representative Adam Schiff. Now, Adam Schiff is still out there saying there's tons of collusion to see. You know, he just absolutely refuses to deal with reality. And Tom Fitton is saying that Schiff has knowingly lied about the Russian collusion. So he fibbed. Okay. Now here's another little take on the 2020 election. Bernie Sanders is out there saying, Bernie or bust is back. But apparently polls among his previous voters are showing they tend to vote, or they plan to vote Trump in 2020. One of the problems Bernie Sanders is dealing with is that he refuses to disavow comments calling for Venezuela-style nationalization of major American industries. And that's not going to sit very well with a lot of the moneyed people. Kamala Harris came on out, apparently did a fast turnaround about letting convicted terrorists vote less than 24 hours after being asked the question during a CNN town hall. Now, this is apparently an issue that Kamala and Bernie share. And the question was basically, should convicted terrorists, including the Boston Marathon bomber, should be allowed to vote in U.S. elections while still in prison? Now, this is an issue which is normally up to the states to determine whether felons can vote. But apparently, Harris just came on out and said, well, voting is important, and yes, we've got to let him vote. And apparently there was just this huge pushback saying, no, we don't want that. Over at Rolling Stone, Matt Taibbi put together a rather interesting article saying that the press will learn nothing from the Russiagate fiasco. And Matt is absolutely right, because the corporate media, they are, for the most part, paid to be liars. They'll lie and they'll get paid, they'll lie and they get paid, and then they get caught and they still get paid. Nobody ever lost their job over that whopper about Saddam's nuclear weapons. And nobody so far has been fired over that 2-year-long Russiagate story. It just went on and on and on. Just all of these completely fantastic, untrue stories. Michael Cohen went to Prague. That was in New York Magazine and McClatchy. Trump directed Michael Cohen to lie, and Mueller has emails proving it. That one was from BuzzFeed. Also turned out to be a lie. The New York Times claimed Paul Manafort passed polling information to the Kremlin. Over at Axios, they claimed that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein was forced out. NBC News, federal investigators wiretapped Trump's personal attorney Michael Cohen, have recordings of Trump. Remember, Associated Press tried to claim that the Russia dossier was actually funded by Republicans, and it just goes on from there. Just dozens and dozens of these stories, hundreds of these stories. And they'd put them out there and they'd try and out-sensationalize each other. And then the corporate media wonders why Trump doesn't really care for them much. So Trump has once again lashed out at the New York Times, Morning Joe, CNN, Democrats, and the EU on Twitter during a busy morning in which a new state visit to Britain was also confirmed. And he's still calling the corporate media the enemy of the people, and they are, as long as they continue to lie. So Trump has apparently issued an order for the entire White House staff. They are not to attend the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And, of course, this is a slap in the face. The whole point of the Correspondents' Dinner is they get to see the big boss up there. So over at CNN, anti-Trump obsessive Brian Stelter complained that Trump's decision to not attend the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner actually constituted an attack on the media. So, I mean, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, it's basically they get together and slap each other on the back and congratulate each other on what wonderful things they're doing. And it's the dinner, and it's also a fundraiser, so it serves at least one useful purpose. Okay, let's talk about some economic news here. Yesterday, I guess, was a really good day on the stock market. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ just hit new record highs. I don't think they did quite as well today, he said. And nah, just metza. A lot of people are saying there really is nowhere upper for the markets to go. They've been driven up just as high as they can be driven. And everybody's expecting a correction. Up in Canada, they're dealing with massive debt up there. Bankruptcy is just ripping through the middle class. They're heading into a recession, probably going to be a bad one. But where do you go? You know, and a lot of people, you know, they're now trying to find new places they can live with lower rents or higher paying jobs. This is probably going to, you know, drain the West Coast. Anyway. Goldman Sachs took a hit on their shares, their stock. The Department of Justice demands a guilty plea in the 1MDB case. This is Goldman's alleged facilitation of the massive $4.5 billion fraud at the Malaysian Sovereign Wealth Fund. And however the probe wound up, it was never going to end well for the bank. So right now, Goldman has had to set aside $500 million in a legal contingency fund to get out of that mess here. Okay, as I mentioned earlier in the show, starting next year, 2020, the Social Security payouts will exceed Social Security tax revenues starting next year. Now, the article was written to make it look like the effect will be felt immediately. We'll just have to see if the government is in fact going to stiff the American worker, because as that one gentleman who called in said, you know, this isn't a handout by the government. This is the money we've paid into the system. And the government basically, for lack of a better word, they've embezzled it. And there's a bunch of these worthless IOUs in there now. So over in India, they're looking at buying 1.5 million ounces of gold this year. Over in Russia, they've just bought another 600,000 ounces of gold. And according to this article over in Investment Watch blog, gold seasonality is bearish, but the future's turning bullish. Which is a good thing. Let's see. Down in New Zealand, they've done a survey there, and customers tend to be satisfied with their banks overall, but less than half think banks can be trusted, and almost 2/3 doubt that they have their customers' best interests at heart. Well, yeah, that's common sense. They're there to make money off of you. One way or the other, they're there to make money off of you. And we've seen all these financial institutions that have been caught playing financial games. Remember Bernie Madoff, for example. Goldman Sachs, Deutsche. Now, Harley-Davidson reported a nearly 27% drop in profit, and Trump is now vowing to reciprocate against European Union tariffs. And I got to be very honest, it's these tariffs that are driving the world economy into chaos. Anyway, people are still looking at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal, and the goal is to move America into zero carbon emissions in 10 years. And according to James Meigs, former editor of Popular Mechanics magazine, says that's a goal you could only imagine possible if you have no idea how energy is produced. He says renewable is so inconsistent, you can't just put in wind turbines and solar panels. You have to build all this infrastructure to connect it with the energy consumers. Wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. Renewable energy requires many more transmission lines and bigger batteries. By the way, somebody did a study and basically came on out that electric cars aren't the green vehicles that everybody thought when you factor in the carbon emissions from the cost of mining and manufacturing those batteries. Apparently it's a high carbon operation. Okay. So let's talk about immigration, which is all over. Over in Austria, their Interior Minister Herbert Kickl warns of a new massive migration wave heading to Europe this spring. I think Monday we told you about this, how Hungary has put up a 100-mile fence, razor wire electrified, and says he hopes it inspires the Americans. Okay. Crimea just completed a fence on their border with Ukraine. And a little bit of good news, something that Trump did. Trump has now cut off Section 8 housing funding for illegal immigrants. We got to stop handing out the free stuff. That's what's bringing them here. All right, let's take a call from James in California. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael.
Hey.
I guess I'm supposed to be James from Sacramento.
Okay.
The 2-drink minimum. So one of the things I was talking about was you got onto it earlier. Was who was that guy that wrote that book about the money assassination, where he would go in and they would do the IMF and they would like slam these countries into debt. Remember that book? He actually
I remember the book. I don't remember who wrote it, but that is what the IMF does.
Yeah. And then the other thing is when I was watching you, I was wondering what was with the cane, but then you said to one of your callers that you'd fallen down the stairs.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Well, no, I'm having to use the cane, and I'm in a lot of pain. In fact, next commercial break, I'm going to have to grab some pain pills.
Oh, God, are you serious? Your doctor actually gives you pain pills?
No, it's over-the-counter stuff.
Sucker.
It's over-the-counter stuff. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, because I'm getting old like you, brother. And, sometimes I have to use the cane. So anyway, and so one of the other things I wanted to say was about the pharmaceuticals. And I was wondering about you and Claire with the health things that you guys have been through. Because I just went through a thing with Kaiser, with this insane pharmaceutical thing. I mean, silly. It's just these inhalers. They're giving me these inhalers.
Yeah.
And one of them is this thing called Spiriva. And it just has something to do with my asthma.
Okay.
It doesn't have anything to do with like COPD or anything like that. And it was $750.
Wow.
For a 1-month inhaler.
Man,
I mean,
that was another thing that Trump ran on. Trump at one point said he was going to look at why medical costs in this country are so high compared to other countries.
Yeah. And that's why I was calling in. I wanted to bring that up because I know over the last couple of years, you and Claire have been through some of your own stuff. You had your own bronchial problem that you had, and Claire
that was
has her
pneumonia.
back problem. Yeah, but I mean, how did they rip you off on that, or did you have some good insurance?
Well, fortunately, I had good insurance, and of course, now we're both on, Medicaid plus a supplemental. So far, so good.
Yeah, exactly. And that was why I just tripped out. I couldn't believe, because when I got these before...
Yeah, James, I'm going to have to let you go. I have to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go right back to the telephones to Sovereign Man. And aloha, Sob. What's on your mind today?
Mike, you're on my mind. And if you don't mind, I say you're in my prayers also.
Thank you.
Or should I say, I'm sending out good healing thoughts. I wanted to ask you, do you have Epsom salts?
I think we may.
You need to get some if you don't. That magnesium
that we've got.
It's foundational. If you can soak with that, I don't mean to promote a product, but I use this stuff called Dr. Teal's, and you can pick it up virtually anywhere. It will expedite your healing. It'll put back in your body what it needs to have healed. And I would recommend, if you can get a nice free-range chicken or something that you can cook down and make some bone soup.
Yep.
And that'll heal you very rapidly, Michael.
Thank you.
Yeah, and how's your motility? You say you're using a cane, so you obviously did some damage to your leg. But how bad?
Well, I mean, I didn't break anything. I didn't need to go to the ER, but I did seriously torque the knee, and I hurt the foot, so I'm just hobbling around.
Yeah,
I'm a lot better now than I was this time yesterday.
Yeah, well, that's a blessing.
Yes.
Just ask the listeners to think good thoughts for you and Claire, and that that your healing shall come about rapidly.
Well, thank you very much for the kind thoughts here, and we're going to let you go and get on back to some news here. Okay, down on the border, little bit of an interesting confrontation, if you will. The Pentagon is investigating this incident. Took place early this month where 2 United States Army soldiers were briefly detained and disarmed by Mexican soldiers on our side of the border, U.S. territory near Clint, Texas. Now, fortunately, the U.S. soldiers just went along with it. They didn't want to escalate the situation. But obviously, the Pentagon wants to know, what were these Mexican soldiers doing on our side of the border, harassing our soldiers? President Trump is accusing the Mexican troops of actively helping drug smugglers and says he's going to send armed soldiers back to the border. What we need is that wall. Now, there's been a big stink here because there was this armed militia that was basically turning back illegal immigrants, and they have now been stopped. They're accusing the leader of this militia of all kinds of crazy things, like wanting to kill Obama. But people are out there trying to solve this problem. We'll come back to this after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. So we're talking about the border. We're talking about, citizen activists trying to do something about it. And there's this individual who's over on the Rents website, who's basically surveying the border with a video camera. And he's finding there are huge holes. And he made this video about a 13-mile gap in the fence just west of Yuma. And he says it's a hot spot for the crossing of illegal immigrants, where they just have a short walk from a Mexican highway to what they see as the good life at the expense of American taxpayers. And apparently there are even bigger gaps in the fence in southern Arizona, and he's going to get out there and start documenting them all, kind of a Project Veritas for the immigration fences. Anyway, we were talking about this patriotic American who's out there trying to do the federal government's job along the U.S.-Mexico border, and the FBI has come on in and they're accusing him of all kinds of bad things. But can we trust the FBI? Because they were neck deep in fabricating the Russian collusion hoax. They've lied about a lot of things. James Earl Ray, for example, Vince Foster. Now, corporate media and the government keep saying, well, there's just a few bad apples at the top, but every time they remove a bad apple from the top, there seems to all of a sudden be another bad apple just sliding up from underneath. One little piece of news. apparently Border Patrol agents found a 3-year-old wandering alone in the desert with a phone number written on his shoes. Apparently he was just put on through, and somebody was hoping he'd be found, and they'd call whoever that phone number is, and I'm sure the Border Patrol have already called him here. Over in Spain, their election authority is banning anti-mass migration populists from the upcoming television debates. It's again, there's a lot of juice behind this globalism. Now, polls are showing that Nigel Farage's Brexit party is set to storm the upcoming EU elections with a shock win. So, Nigel's going to be back here. Remember Jessie Smollett, those two Nigerian brothers? Well, apparently they have provided more information, and it certainly looks like Jessie Smollett had a lot more to do with planning the hoax than was originally thought. And so people are saying, is it time for the Chicago District Attorney to prosecute him? I would say, yeah, probably. Okay, Democrats are trying to grab guns again. One of our callers mentioned this already. Google has blocked Press TV's accounts on its platforms, including YouTube and Gmail, without any prior notice, citing violation of policies. And this is getting just a little bit scary, where these private companies simply stop doing business with people they don't agree with. There was another story where apparently Bank of America shut down the bank accounts of this church and its pastor because they preached the hard line Christian view of homosexuality. All right, we got a caller on the line. Chris in Las Vegas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I thank you so very, very much, Michael. Your observations and concerns about the corruption in the FBI are clearly very well founded by my own personal experience here in the Las Vegas area with this whole corrupt, abject Ninth Circuit area. Two FBI agents here, their supervisors, and whomever the head, which I think now is Jason Aruz, although it may have been the former Stephen Myrie, false arrested me and false incarcerated me. I have a monster suit against the Clark County and the state of Nevada and the Southern Nevada Joint Terrorism Task Force that's coming to fruition here very, very soon. And it should be a monumental case, and very likely will have to go to the Federal Circuit Court of Claims and the small d, small c district courts of the U.S. to be resolved because of the lengthy false incarceration by rogue criminal agents that were embedded left over from the Obama forces of the FBI. And so I really appreciate you shedding the light on that, and if there's anything else I can answer about it, I'm happy to do so for you.
Well, again, my awareness of the FBI goes back to COINTELPRO, because that was all going on when I was in junior college and college. And it had nothing to do with law enforcement and everything to do with stifling freedom of speech, especially protests about the war. And they were targeting not just the anti-war activists, they were targeting Native Americans, they were targeting the early feminists, and it was about just maintaining control. And you have to have a certain mindset to be willing to engage in that sort of thing. And I imagine part of the vetting and hiring process over at the FBI is that they make sure you are that kind of an individual before they give you your badge.
Well, you're absolutely right, Michael. In fact, what most people do not cognize is that all agencies, bureaus, and departments are under the executive offices, under their chief executive powers and chief of the armed forces. as private for private profits corporate agencies. Therefore, they have a financially vested interest in generating as much revenue by whatever means or schemes they can promote and provocate.
Okay.
And this is why it's become a very dangerous organization. And this is where we come into a very, very dangerous concept. When they have money at hand, this is why Trevor Aaron's book, The Terror Factory, is so operative on what's going on, because when you can invent terrorists and create your own false flag events so you can investigate them ad infinitum, enjoy unjust, egregious enrichment, and therefore create felony criminal conversion of the people's money to their own self-interest, promotes them to carry out these devious acts of creating false flag terrorists so they can enrich themselves and perhaps advance themselves in employment or increase their status amongst their peers. And with that, I think I'll let you go on, but I thank you so much for considering this very important topic for your conversation today.
Yeah, obviously when the FBI stages a false flag, regardless of who gives the actual order, everybody involved is going to see it as an opportunity to advance their career, to get noticed, to get a bigger budget for their department. And yeah, so that's what happens. Anyway, Chris, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And I don't know that this is going to go anywhere, but there's this 18-year-old kid from New York. He has filed a $1 billion with a B dollar lawsuit against Apple over a false arrest he says happened because of what he believes to be Apple's facial recognition system. Now, NYPD officers arrested Osman Ba on November 29th after he was falsely linked to a series of Apple Store thefts in Boston, New Jersey, Delaware, and Manhattan. Apparently, the real perpetrator used a stolen ID that had his name, address, and other personal information, but it did not have a photo. And so the lawsuit claims Apple programmed its store's face recognition system to associate the real thief's face with Ba's details. However, an Apple spokesperson told Engadget that the company does not use facial recognition in its stores, at least not yet. So apparently the case against this kid fell apart. He had an alibi for the Boston theft, and they're saying it's not clear if this case will hold up in court, and I don't think it will. Story coming out of Natural News here. Why do you even use Facebook? It's a question that over 42% of Americans are now asking. And it talks about people who are Facebook junkies. And Pew Research Center did this study, and they revealed that 42% of American adults hadn't checked their feeds for several weeks. The researchers also found that about 26% of Americans deleted the app from their smartphones. I haven't looked at Facebook in an age. Okay, this one's very sad. There was this schoolgirl, 12 years old, and committed suicide in her room 2 days before her birthday after sharing social media photos of her foot with RIP drawn on it. The coroner is warning of her intense social media activity in days before the death. Yeah, you got to keep a limit on it. You can't be addicted to that screen here. In fact, I saw another article that says right now people are spending so much time on their tablets and phones, it's actually creating posture problems. Okay, a little more information coming out of Notre Dame, and apparently the guy who was running the building from 2000 to 2013, apparently responding to this report in the Associated Press that the fire was likely caused by an electrical short circuit. Former French Inspector General for Historic Monuments, Benjamin Mouton, basically said there was a state-of-the-art fire prevention system installed in 2010. and the cathedral was completely rewired. It's all brand new in there. So he says the fire wasn't caused by the electrical short circuit. A lot of people are still pointing to the fact that there was also a fire at the Al-Aqsa Mosque and saying, Okay, let's get into political correctness. This is over at cuzblue.com. Over in the College of Natural Science Diversity Group at MSU, they're saying that no science is needed to support transgender and non-binary identities. Apparently, you are what you feel. Over in New Jersey, their mayor is defending Kate Smith's God Bless America and says the song will still be played on the boardwalk. He says everybody wants to rewrite history. So, but this is Mayor Ernio Troiano, and he refused to back down when confronted that some tri-state neighbors were canning Kate Smith's version of God Bless America because of Smith's purported ties to racism. By the way, somebody sent me a story. That same song was also being sung by dark entertainers, black entertainers. Apparently they didn't have a problem with it. Do you remember a while back there was this story about this vegan restaurant that charged men 18% more than women to sort of balance for pay inequality? And of course it was only one day a month. But apparently they got tired of doing that and they're shutting down the end of this month. Over in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, they're still dealing with the Ebola. And public health experts have been claiming that it will not become a global health threat, but they don't really know. And part of the problem, again, because it's such a violent place right now, people are moving around. It's hard to track down patients. Over in China, there's an outbreak of African swine fever that has spread all across China's mainland. It is decimating their hog industry and the global supply of pork. The epidemic broke out 9 months ago and is still, to this day, uncontained. Boy, oh boy, bad things happening. Over in Georgia, the state of Georgia is experiencing a statewide viral outbreak of hepatitis A. And apparently 250 cases of the infection have been identified. That's more than 4 times the number of infections back in 2017. And they've been tracking this current outbreak back to June of 2018. The number of cases identified is 9 times higher than the total of 24 infections identified in 2017. Hepatitis A has been spreading rapidly in areas with a large homeless population. And apparently some cities in California have even taken to bleaching the streets in an attempt to contain the infection. Over in Vietnam, they're demanding that Monsanto compensate victims of Agent Orange for cancer and birth defects. Another fine product from Monsanto. And of course, what made Agent Orange so effective was a chemical called dioxin, which is highly carcinogenic. So Agent Orange studies were mandated by Congress in the 1980s. These studies were headed by Dr. Frank Stefano and Dr. Colleen Boyle of the CDC, who are now in charge of vaccine safety studies at the agency. So Frank and Colleen ended the Agent Orange studies 2 years early, claiming that no link could be found between illnesses being reported by injured veterans and Agent Orange. The early termination of the study is what allowed the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to deny any connection between Agent Orange and medical problems, preventing veterans and their families from qualifying for fair compensation. So now the Vietnamese are in there saying, well, we're not going to be such pushovers. Apparently, the United States has agreed to clean up one airfield in Vietnam that was contaminated with Agent Orange. Alrighty, rapid increase in natural catastrophes is already hitting global supply chains. We talked about that one already. We just went past another Earth Day. And like every other Earth Day that we have been dealing with since 1970, there's always these spectacular predictions, these doom predictions that, you know, the Earth is getting hotter, the oceans are going to melt, we're using crude oil at such a fast rate, there won't be any more. They haven't hit it once, by the way. Not one of their predictions has actually come true, but they make great headlines. All right. And we did mention the other day, NASA is now admitting that higher carbon dioxide levels are making the Earth greener. Okay. Down in New Zealand, in Auckland, there was this protest. Protesters literally blocked traffic at this intersection in a rebellion against climate change. It's just insane. It really is. Okay. Whole Foods is in a little bit of trouble. They have their own house brand of bottled water, and apparently a few times the brand Starkey Water has had to be recalled for high levels of arsenic. And it could very well be that that bottled water you're bringing home from the store isn't as good for you as what comes out of the tap. Okay, we're going to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and getting on into some more of the medical news. Apparently, Gofundme is now banning anyone who questions vaccines. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, NBC and CNN were literally caught making faked measles photos. Apparently, they couldn't find a real measles baby, so they took some photos and photoshopped them, and they got caught at it. It's all about scaring you into getting, you know, your vaccines. It's a big money maker. Now, over in New York City, there was this lawsuit brought by these 5 parents who are refusing to go along with the mandatory vaccine, and the judge just dismissed the case and basically shores up this emergency order declaring the city's measles outbreak to be a public health emergency. There have been 329 confirmed cases of the viral illness, most among observant Jews in the Williamsburg neighborhood of Brooklyn. This is a weird one. No, I did actually have these the other day here. So yes, this Pastor Stephen Anderson of the Faithful Word Baptist Church in Tempe, Arizona, said Monday on YouTube that Bank of America shut down all the bank accounts of his church and froze the accounts without notice. Can't even get the money out. They're going to have to wait for 2 weeks for a cashier's check. And apparently it was over his fundamentalist preachings on homosexuality. I really do have an issue with that. If we're not going to respect the right to freedom of speech, we've lost this country. Okay. We've been talking about artificial intelligence and how, if properly used, they can help make government more effective and responsive, improving the lives of citizens. Improperly used, however, the dystopian visions of George Orwell's 1984 become more realistic. And there's also the issue that there's very little oversight on this. And again, the artificial intelligence systems are learning. But how do we know what they're learning is the correct thing? It's not like there's a teacher AI with a classroom full of student AIs. And there have been some spectacular instances where AIs are self-learning and then all of a sudden just come out with something violent or racist. So I think there does need to be more controls on this thing. Alrighty, yet another Facebook scandal. The company data mined email user contacts from new users. In other words, when you signed up, it was going to data mine all of your emails, even if they are not members of Facebook. And this is another huge, huge scandal. And the company's password verification feature for new users collected contact data from the users' email accounts without their consent. So Business Insider has revealed that Facebook has harvested the email contacts of 1.5 million users without their knowledge or consent when they opened their accounts. A security researcher, Sushi, questioned why Facebook was asking for email passwords when new users signed up for the platform. Business Insider then discovered that if you did enter your email password, a message popped up saying it was importing your contacts without asking for permission first. Alrighty, let's see. Over in Taiwan, they've had a 6.1 earthquake. And it was shallow, so probably felt it a lot worse. Another article about glyphosate, worse than we could imagine. As new studies continue to point to a direct link between the widely used glyphosate herbicide and various forms of cancer, the agribusiness lobby is fighting ferociously to ignore or discredit evidence of human or other damage. And this is the morality of America's corporate culture. We don't care if it's harming people. We just want to sell it, and we don't want them complaining. Anyway, we got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. The phone lines are loading up, so let's go to Sherry in Texas. Aloha, Sherry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Aloha. Listen, men, we've talked about this before. I don't know if this was covered because I don't always get the show, but men athletes participating with women, and there's this big, they want to self-identify as women. I don't know what the problem is because we talked about this, how the DNA shows at puberty, it sort of flags one's natural gender orientation, because there are, it's a grayscale. You know, some people, I have higher testosterone for my gender, but I'm definitely straight. But it can go up or down, you know, for different people. And I was a tomboy and everything, but I just turned out straight. So okay, so you have why self-identify? I mean, check the DNA, the hormones, because that's what's fair, that's what's just. Just have a doctor come in and say, well, let's see where you lie in this scale, you know, and then if you're mostly female, maybe then they could participate, because then their gender orientation would be honest. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, but the problem is that these transgender men, they've grown up saturated with male DNA and male growth hormones, and overall they're simply bigger and faster than the girl athletes. This is very unfair to the girls, and it's just another example of how our society is devolving into almost Caligula-like bizarreness, with all of this stuff. I mean,
it's strange, but there should be no question. If you're clear of all drugs, both. I mean, do it for the women and that might want to identify with the men. I don't know if that would be the case, but just be clear of the drugs and just go straight to the DNA and see which person. If there's any question of identity, it's going to be there. It's going to be there. You know, I mean, it's part of a routine physical anyway to look at some of that. Anyhow, I don't see if they were both cleared from drugs, they could say, yes, you really do have more of a propensity towards manhood than you do femaleness, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Now, according to your DNA, therefore, we will consider you being on this team. Because, and it seems like they'd want to know if there's any question. Just walking around like a girl because it would be fun to wear the clothes or something. I mean, I don't get this at all, because they can always be a transvestite on stage or something. Be an entertainer.
Yeah.
But if you really want to, if you're really serious about knowing what gender you are, this is the way to do it. Just, and you can be finished with high school. You don't have to introduce this into the school at, in your anything in grammar in like 7th, 8th grade. You don't need to introduce, or earlier. You don't need to introduce this orientation until you finish high school, until you're at least a sophomore or freshman, sophomore in high school, or sophomore, junior in high school. Then you can start looking at, I'm wondering if I'm gay. And so you go ahead and have the test done. But you can do that quietly after you graduate, because then you'll be fully into your cycle to be, your puberty will be just at a measurable quantity. At that point, you don't even have to address it in high school. You can do it quietly afterwards. And parents should know this. If there's any bother, just test it, and then talk to your child and see which they would rather be. The male that shows they are, the female that shows that they are, and then you can come to it from a logical standpoint and a natural standpoint, rather than, it would be fun,
Well,
it would be
again,
fun thing.
my concern is not with the people who genuinely think that they're a different gender or somewhere in between. My concern is that we're seeing this stuff being promoted to children at a very young age. They're building social pressure to say that you're transgender, and a lot of kids, unfortunately, are buying into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's the separation of our society. That's the fracturing of our society going on, because they're doing that with religion, and they're doing it with everything. They're finding ways to fracture our society. But, the more we know, the more we can come about things logically and just ignore all that attempt to fracture us. Can I say something really real about the left brain AI and the right brain creative connection?
Okay.
You can't merge the two. I keep hearing how you can merge AI, artificial intelligence, with a right brain God, a creative, omnipotent, all-power, all-knowing universe. Can't be lesser, made lesser, merging with a brain-oriented ego, left brain. The right brain is, connecting with a all-knowing universe. That's a creative connection, always. They've tested that. On the Diane Rehm show, one of the last shows, the last year she was broadcasting, she had 4 Montessori school educators on, and one of them had tested monks. They put the nodes or whatever on their brains, and when they had them do their own thing, and it was a right brain connection. And so is savantism, so is psychic stuff. It's all right brain, and you can't make that lesser by throwing in a little ego, something from the left brain. It just won't. They won't mix. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I just thought if anyone could get a podcast of that broadcast, where the guy came forward and said, it is a right brain connection, this connecting with people with where they can recall every day of their lives, autobiographical memory.
Okay.
That's a right brain connection. Savantism is a right brain connection. All that stuff. And that's something that's never talked about when they say artificial intelligence can be, and God can kind of merge. They can't.
Okay.
It can't be done. All right. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Sherry. And we're going to switch over to Mike in California. Aloha, Mike. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mike in California. Okay, let's switch over to Don in Iowa then. Don, aloha, welcome to the show.
He's not there, and Don dropped. So
okay.
No callers at the moment.
So we have no callers at the moment. Okay. All right, getting on back to the science stories here. Apparently, astronomers are looking at the Kepler 47 binary star system, and they have detected a third planet, which they say is probably going to be about the size of Saturn. And I remember when I was a kid, it was a question. We didn't know. Do other stars have planets? How rare are they? Now we're finding out basically it's a feature of all these solar systems here. And over on the International Space Station, astronauts captured the Northrop Grumman Corporation's Cygnus spacecraft with the station's robotic arm, snagging 7,600 pounds of cargo, apparently just in time for Easter. So on April 17th, the spacecraft launched on Northrop Grumman's Antares rocket from Pad 0A at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport at NASA's Wallops Island facility in Virginia. And the mid-afternoon launch drew record-breaking crowds from the surrounding area, and just everybody came on in to take a look at that. So after launch, the spacecraft's solar arrays deployed, generated power to the craft, and brought it in there with that Canada arm. Okay, we have another caller on the line. Terry in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
John, Mike, that was Perkins. I think it was John Perkins who wrote Diary of an Economic Hitman.
Yeah, somebody just mailed that in to me. Confessions of an Economic Hitman, John Perkins.
That question you had, can we trust the CIA? It was a rhetorical question. Of course, the answer to that is no, right,
yes,
Mike?
Correct.
And I was on YouTube this morning listening to Ron program, and he had a video on there of Mike Pompeo talking to some group, and he was talking about his oath he took at West Point, where he vowed not to lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate anybody who does. And then he chuckled and says, when I was the head of the CIA, that's all we did was lie, cheat, and steal.
Yep.
And then he laughed, and everybody, and Ron Paul thought, that's not a very good thing to laugh about, But anyway, that's the CIA, and we can't trust them either. And the NSA, I think they came out with something saying that they were going to get rid of the metadata. They weren't going to keep that anymore. But I understand that that program is going to be thrown out, but it's going to be replaced with another one.
Yes. That
is going to keep the metadata and the content too. I don't know. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I heard rumblings about that. I mean, we're in this total surveillance society. They're spying on everybody, including Donald Trump.
Yeah. We got, John McAfee was saying your cell phone. You were talking about everybody has, is on their cell phone. Your cell phone's your biggest spy device against you.
Yes.
And people have it with them all the time, And is it true that if you get your cell phone off, that they can turn that on and monitor you with that you not even knowing? Is there any truth in that?
I presume that it would be true because it would be trivial to accomplish. The way that you would get away from that is you have a metal box that you can store the phone in that would cut it off from all outside communication. There's a company that actually makes aluminum cases for smartphones that will basically cut them off from the outside world.
Yeah, so turn it off, then put it in that box just to make sure, right?
Yeah.
Also, the latest smartphone that I got, the battery doesn't come out. They used to say, to be sure, just take the battery out of the back. Turn it off, take the battery out. But my new cell phone, this LG, you can't take the battery out.
Yep.
I mean, there's all kinds of instructions saying don't try to take the battery out, and otherwise it voids the warranty. And there's no door on there anyway to take it out. And so I'm wondering, you think they went over to this just to prevent people from taking their battery out?
Well, I've noticed. I've noticed
on
over the years that there was an evolution. I remember when your cell phones, smartphones had a little memory slot where you could put your own memory in there and save things, and then take that out. That's no longer there. The iPhone, you can't change the battery on either. You've got the the speakerphone system, which is really about including a microphone that can hear the entire room. Over time, the smartphones have evolved to be more the government's friend than our own.
Right. So if you can do without a cell phone, that might be the smartest way to go if you want to have a little semblance of privacy. But everybody's kind of addicted to them now, where they can't get by without them because they got to call.
Yep.
What really happened every day at 1 o'clock, like me. And but that's the way it goes. All right, Mike. I just got out of the hospital at the VA, and I had pneumonia. And this girl came around. She's a nutritionist, and she was talking about my meals and all that. And I said, you know what? I'd rather not have GMO food, and because I know it's all doused with glyphosate, something you just talked about a little while ago.
Yeah.
And she says, I'm sorry, it's all GMO because the government buys it for all the VA hospitals, and you don't have a choice. You either got to eat this food or not eat. So anyway, I guess I can assume that if I'm eating GMO foods, I'm getting glyphosate as well. Would you say?
Yes, you probably are.
All right, Mike, just some ideas for today. Appreciate your help and your insight, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. Yeah, unfortunately, glyphosate, they will literally spray it on the produce at the supermarket because it acts as a preservative. And it's the wonder product, supposedly. So, but there's more evidence continuing to surface about the links between glyphosate and cancer. And of course, Monsanto is trying hard to find some way to knock this back down again. There's something like 11,000 pending lawsuits against them. All right, let's go back to the phones here. Robert in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, aloha, Mike. Cell phones in general. That's what's on my mind. Okay. Well, I just was listening to your last caller there, and believe it or not, I actually still have a cell phone that I can take the battery out of, and I have a SIM card and an SD card that I'm able to remove from it at my own leisure. If people do look around, they can still find that. I just wanted to add that in.
Okay.
No, we all need to be informed, that's all.
Yeah.
There's a lot of phones out there that won't allow you to do this anymore. Just be aware. Every time you walk into the T-Mobile store, the Boost Mobile store, wherever you happen to go, just really choose your phone wisely. I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can avoid this crap that they're feeding us hand over foot. It's about time we all start standing up in whichever way we feel most comfortable. I don't care whether that's like lining up at a Planned Parenthood center or choosing the right cell phone. But we all need to start, voting with our dollars here. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of people, they're concerned about their privacy. and they should be. The Fourth Amendment says the government is supposed to mind its own business. And it isn't just the invasion of our privacy, it's the long history of the government engaging in nefarious activity with that equipment. Anyway, Robert, we're going to let you go here. Got to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these few minutes. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today. And looking at what happened in Sri Lanka, what happened before that, it does almost seem like we're approaching a state of religious intolerance, holy war. German lawmakers are calling for stronger protection of Christian minorities worldwide after the coordinated attacks on churches and hotels in Sri Lanka on Easter Sunday killed more than 300 people. Members of German Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservative Christian Democratic Union, there's a mouthful for you, the Liberal Free Democrats and Greens all expressed their concerns about what they saw as growing violence against Christians. Well, I think there's been a public perception of growing violence against Muslims. So everybody needs to just cut it out. Over in New Jersey, 16 men were arrested in a child predator sting operation, including a pastor from Philadelphia. They were calling the arrest Operation Home Alone. And this minister, Roger Arroyo, is 37 years old, was charged for allegedly luring kids through social media applications. And there, of course, is another reason why maybe you shouldn't allow your kids that much access to social media. In fact, there was just a banner here on the Fox News where the World Health Organization is saying that children under the age of 5 should not be allowed to use the device for more than 1 hour per day. I'm in agreement, not for any medical reasons, but because you've got to plug them into the real world. This one's just a little bit sick, and I'm saying that only because I used to be a Boy Scout. Apparently, court documents indicate 7,819 Boy Scout troop leaders abused 12,254 victims. I guess I might have been a really ugly scout when I was in Scouts, because nothing like that ever happened to me. By the way, remember when the Boy Scouts dropped the word boy because they wanted to be gender inclusive? Now there's just simply the Scouts. And apparently, for some reason, the Girl Scouts are now trying to sue them. This whole world has just gone totally, totally crazy. Everybody's suing everybody. Everybody's, they're triggered by all this stuff. Okay. Apparently, this man has been standing outside Hillary Clinton's house and demanding her immediate arrest, which I would like to see. And Medicare is approaching bankruptcy. That's not a good thing to have here. Okay, Twitter has shadow banned Michael Savage after he questions the Notre Dame fire story. Okay, and there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Please have a good evening, and please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. Please share what you learn here with everybody. Please donate to What Really Happened. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.